These are the notes about the solar system. So before we can actually get into too much about the solar system, we're going to have to talk a little bit about distances. The Earth is about 93 million miles from the Sun. And that distance from the Earth to the Sun, is what we call an astronomical unit, or an AU. So when we talk about how far the planets are from the Sun, I'll tell you how many AUs, or that astronomical unit, the planets are away from the Sun. And then we use that unit to make it easier to measure the solar system. So it'd be a lot easier to say that the Earth is 1 AU away from the Sun rather than saying 93 million miles all the time. The Sun is the biggest, brightest, and hottest object in the solar system. The Sun is an ordinary star. So it's the star that we all surround. It's that main star in our solar system, and of course it gives us life. The Sun is made of about 70% hydrogen and 28% helium. So the main thing there is that the Sun is made up of hydrogen and helium. Remember, the Earth is nitrogen and oxygen. The Sun is hydrogen and helium.
It'll take him all day to figure this one out.
How many planets are there, and in what order are they from the Sun? Maybe saying 9, maybe saying 8, might be hearing other numbers besides 8 or 9, but let's actually find out.
And I thought this was going to be a dull day.
I have a picture here of all of the planets, including Pluto, even though hopefully you guys know by now that Pluto is a dwarf planet. So actually we only have 8 planets now, and here they are in the order from the Sun. Mercury is the closest, and then Venus, and then Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. I know you guys have been taught to say it a different way, but the way that I want you to say it is Uranus. And the other thing that I want to point out to you here is that Uranus spins on its side. This would be the North Pole, and this would be the South Pole. This picture is showing you where the North and the South Poles are for all of the planets. And it spins on its side. The other thing on here to point out is that Venus actually spins the opposite way of all the others. If you look at this arrow up here, it spins clockwise, whereas all of the other planets spin counterclockwise. So we're going to talk about the inner planets, and those are the first 4. They're also called the terrestrial planets because they're made of rocky crusts, terrestrial like Earth. So they're the earthy sort of planets. They're made of rocks. And then here they are sized to scale. You've got Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Mercury is solid and it's covered with craters. Mercury has almost no atmosphere, and it's the 8th largest planet. So it sounds very similar to a description of what Earth's moon would be. So the 8th largest planet actually means it's the smallest now that we've gotten rid of Pluto also. Venus is the 6th largest planet. It's about 3/4 the size of Earth. It's also called Earth's twin because it's right about the same size as Earth. The surface is rocky and very hot. The atmosphere completely hides the surface and traps in the heat. Earth is the 5th largest planet and the 3rd from the Sun. Liquid covers 71% of the Earth's surface. And then it's the only planet with oxygen, which is why life on Earth exists, because of that oxygen. And then the moon. The Earth has only 1 moon. So Mercury and Venus have no moons. Now we get to Earth as the 3rd planet away from the Sun, and we have a moon here. Mars is the 4th planet from the Sun. Mars has a thin atmosphere that contains mostly carbon dioxide. And then Mars has 2 small moons. So, no moon for Mercury, no moon for Venus, 1 for Earth, 2 moons for Mars. So as we move away from the Sun, the number of moons is increasing. And here are a couple pictures of the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. And then the asteroid belt separates between the terrestrial, those inner planets, and the outer planets. And it's positioned where another planet should be, but Jupiter's gravity prevented that from happening. So when we have all of these little miniature pieces of a planet or these asteroids floating around, they weren't able to come together because Jupiter's gravity is so big, because it's such a big planet, that it prevented them all from coming together to form that planet. All asteroids put together would make a planet about half the size of the moon, which would be about 932 miles across. And then here's a picture of where the asteroid belt is. You've got the sun in the middle. This is, of course, not to scale. And then you've got Mercury and Venus. Here's Earth. Mars is here. And then those asteroid belts. And this is obviously showing it to you as a flat representation, but the asteroids are up and down, as well as around and between Mars and Jupiter.
Ho ho, very funny. Ha ha, it is to laugh.
And there's Daffy telling you what we're about to talk about. The gas planets, or the outer planets. You've got Jupiter here, and then Saturn, and then Uranus and Neptune out there. And Jupiter. Jupiter does not have a solid surface. The planet is a ball of liquid surrounded by gas. Ooh, sorry about that. It also has the Great Red Spot, a huge storm of swirling gas that has lasted for hundreds of years. So we're looking at Jupiter here, and then this is Jupiter's red spot right there. And just like it says it's a swirling storm, it's almost like a giant hurricane. It's 2 times the size of Earth. And Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface, so it's all just gas. And then here are some more pictures of the Great Red Spot. You can see it moving around as we follow these around as we go. And then there is another smaller storm, Red Junior, which is close to the Great Red Spot. And some of the moons of Jupiter. Jupiter has 4 large Galilean moons, 12 are smaller, and then 23 more recently discovered but not named moons. Since this PowerPoint was made, we've actually found even more moons on a lot of these outer planets, so some of these numbers are probably not as accurate as they could be. And many of those moons got pulled into orbit around Jupiter from the asteroid belt. So that's one of the reasons why Jupiter has so many. And then here's an animation. Obviously this is Jupiter, and then these are 2 of Jupiter's moons, Europa and Io. Europa may have liquid water below its icy surface. It's one of the few other celestial bodies that we think might be able to support life because of that water or ice. Io has the only observed active volcanoes other than on Earth. Ganymede is the largest moon in the solar system. It's about 3/4 the size of Mars. Callisto is the oldest and most cratered object in the solar system. And Callisto and Ganymede may have salty liquid water below their crusts. And then here is another picture to scale. There's that Great Red Spot, which we know is 2 sizes, or 2 Earths put together essentially. And then there's Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, those 2 biggest moons of Jupiter. Saturn is the 2nd largest planet and the 6th from the Sun. It's made of materials that are lighter than water, so if you could fit Saturn in a lake or any kind of body of water, it would float because it's less dense than the water. The rings of Saturn are not solid. They're composed of small, countless particles. So as we see these rings, they're actually made up of little tiny particles. The rings are very thin, though they're 250,000 kilometers or more in diameter. They're less than 1 kilometer thick. So they're not like the asteroid belt, which is also thick, as well as going around Mars. These are thin, but wide. Uranus, again, remember how to pronounce it, Uranus, is the third largest planet and the seventh from the sun. And then here's that thing that I pointed out to you at the beginning about it spinning on its side. That's one of the big characteristics, something you want to know because it's different than any of the other planets. Uranus is blue-green because of the methane in its atmosphere. So when that methane is reflected, we see that blue-green color. Neptune is the fourth largest planet and the eighth from the sun. Just to point out to you, as we've gone along with these gas planets, they've been getting smaller. So Jupiter is the biggest planet, Saturn's the second biggest, Uranus is the third biggest, and then Neptune is the fourth largest planet. Because of the orbits from 1979 to 1999, Neptune was the ninth planet. And this is another reason why we decided that Pluto should not count as one of our planets for our solar system, because Pluto actually moved in closer to the sun. It has a weird orbit as compared to the other planets. And when Pluto moved itself inside of Neptune and pushed Neptune out sort of as the ninth planet, that was one of the reasons why we think that Pluto shouldn't be one of our planets. Like Uranus, the methane gives Neptune that blue-green color again. And here's Pluto, the dwarf planet, the rejected planet. And usually it is the furthest from the sun, but like I was just talking about, sometimes it has that weird orbit that moves it inside of Neptune and makes it the eighth planet, or this dwarf planet. And that dwarf part means that it's a mini planet. It's not big enough to be classified as a planet. And then we've got Setna, the possibly 10th planet in our solar system. And of course it would be classified as a dwarf planet. It's 900 AUs away from us, so not even from the sun, but away from us. And its orbit around the sun takes it 10,500 years. And it isn't circular. It's kind of like Pluto's orbit. Pluto's orbit is not circular. That's why it can move in front of Neptune sometimes. And then here's Setna's size in comparison to the Earth. This is another moon in the solar system. Here's Pluto, our moon, and then of course the Earth. And here's a good way to remember the order of the planets. Many people know them as a different way, but this is the one I've got here. So if you know one that will help you to know the planets in order, stick with that one. But this is just an example of one of them. My very energetic mother, and then we know the asteroid belt, just served us, and you used to be able to say 9 pies or 9 pizzas. But now we want to change it, and instead of serving you 9 whatevers, we're going to say just served us nothing, because we're going to get rid of the Pluto part to it. So we'll stop with Neptune as saying nothing. My very energetic mother just served us nothing. So Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And then make sure that you know that the first 4 are the inner or the terrestrial planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And then the last 4 are the outer planets, or the gas planets, the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And then here's a couple of different pictures just showing you the orbits. This is showing you how Pluto's orbit can come inside of Uranus' orbit sometimes. And then out here, we'll talk a little bit about the Kuiper belt, but just so you know, it's out there past Neptune and Pluto. And then there's possibly Setna way far out there.